Okay, this is the first of what will probably be a long series of videos which will hopefully allow you to create your own courses in the APCD for Linux 2003. I'll assume you've installed APCD 1.5, and the first thing you need to do if you've got Vista or Windows 7 is make sure you've got full admin permission. So if you go onto the APCD-XE, right click it, click Properties, Compatibility. You'll see a box that you can tick saying run this program as an administrator. Now you need that ticked. If you've got Vista, I've also heard you need to have these two checked as well. I've got Windows 7 64. They don't seem to be necessary, but some things didn't function properly on Vista, and it was posted that ticking these two boxes sorted the problem out. So up to you whether you tick those or not, but it's not necessary for me. Okay, so first time we run APCD, it'll open like this with its default settings. I'll just maximize it. And this is Microsoft's idea of a default view. Well, having two windows, top and perspective, is, in my opinion, the best two views, but split like this, one above the other, isn't. So if we go to display, you'll see you can choose different combinations of screens, and the one I'd recommend is this side-by-side split. Now, some people, when they're working in detail on certain parts of the course, like a single screen here, but I really can't see the point in coming back here, changing it to single screen, going back out, doing your work, coming back here, changing it again, because if you point on this middle, you can press and hold your mouse and drag this window wherever you like. So you can, if you want to work on that screen, just drag it to the side. You only have a little bit less space than you would if you had a full screen. So this is the way I work. Just pull that window, hover over it, drag and pull, and you can then work in your preferred window. That way you never have to ever come back to this screen again once you've set it. So next thing is settings within the windows. This is the top view of the course. At the moment you can't see anything on it. This is the perspective view, which has got like a mesh. Well, I like it the other way around. I like this view to have nothing on it, so that I get an idea of what the course will look like. And my top view, I like having the mesh on, which is the hull. So to get to the controls for these, you need to right click where it says top or perspective on the screen. And if I right click there, you'll see another menu pops up, and one of them is display, and here you can tick different options. Now the hull is what shows this grid on the mesh, which at the moment is triangles, but you can have it in a sort of triangular squares, so to speak, but I'll show you that later. So I like that on. I also like the grid off, which runs around the edge, because unless you're building buildings off plot, I can't really see the point in having those horizontal and vertical lines. I'm sure somebody will disagree, but anyway, so I now click on the perspective, go display on that, and I'll turn the hull off on that one. So basically you can have separate settings for each window. To switch between windows, you'll see at the moment this window has a white line around it of the two. That's because that's the active window, because I've clicked in it. If I click in this window, you'll see this has now gone black, and this window is white around the edge because this is the active window. Now you can select between windows by left clicking on the screen, but I strongly recommend you don't do that, because it's okay if you're on a select option, which this is just an arrow that's not doing anything. But if you're on an option where you're planting things, adding verts, doing things to your course, if you just twitch a bit or click and drag, you can accidentally do things on the screen that you really didn't mean to do, and half the time you won't even know you've done them. So nasty things will sneak in and you won't know about them. So the way to switch between these two screens is use the right mouse button. It does exactly the same. It changes the active window, but by using the right mouse button you won't accidentally do anything untoward. So that's my first tip. Hopefully there'll be a few more as the series progresses. So I'm not going to explain about the mesh in this part. I'm just going to give an overview of setting it up, but we'll be coming to how to interact with this in a later video. You'll notice there are some tabs up here. Plan, terrain, planting. We'll be using all of those quite extensively in creating courses, so you'll be flicking between these quite a lot, and each tab then gives you this row of icons which give you more controls, and most of those I use. As I say, once you've set the display up, no real need to ever come back to that, I don't think. There's also a row down the right hand side which has more options. Basically I don't use any of these apart from these two here, the eye, which is a line of sight, and the tape measure for checking out measurements. All of these others, panning and zooming and selecting, I do with the mouse and a couple of keys, which again I'll explain in a later video. So really I just use these two, that's it. Now, setting up, things you definitely don't want to do. If you go onto display, do not have the panorama ticked. If you have this ticked, it can cause problems with displays. It won't display scene blends when you come onto those later correctly, and also shapes, it will disappear and it causes problems. So I would untick panorama. I think it should be unticked, but if you ever need to have a look at the panorama, tick it, have a look, do what you want, then untick it again because it causes trouble. Also crowds, no need really to have the crowds ticked until you're actually planting them. And once you have planted them, I suggest you immediately turn them off again because they can cause crashes. I shall explain about XYZ's settings in a later video as well, and shapes and hull settings. All of this will become clearer later, but for now we'll just leave it at that. Now, general settings, before we start, you want to go to Preferences, which is in Edit. Click that. Now, this is definitely one to turn off. Enable auto backup. It sounds really good. You think, oh yeah, lovely, it's going to stop me forgetting to save it, and it will do it automatically. The problem is, it just does it whenever, no matter what you're doing, whatever time it's set on, it will do it. And if you happen to be doing certain things on your course, when it tries to save it, it will just lock up, crash, cause all sorts of problems. So definitely want to turn off the auto backup. You need to manually save it, and saving is a real important thing. A lot of the problems with crashing comes from memory overflows, where you're working for a long time, the computer stores what you're doing in memory and it doesn't remove it afterwards, so it just gets bigger and bigger until the point where it's going to crash on you. So if you save it regularly, you want to then quit out the program and then come back in. That will cut down 90% of your crashes if you do that every 20-30 minutes. The other thing you might want to change is units, which defaults to meters. I'm afraid I'm a an imperial old school person, and I like everything in feet and yards, so I need to turn that off and set this to English. You'll notice this still is showing in meters, but as soon as I press OK, if I go back in, it will now be in feet, 6 feet camera. So that's about all I touch. I don't bother changing any of these. I've never really gone into them. You can change the colour of the mesh and things, but to be honest, I can't really see the point. So yeah, I think we'll leave it at that.